Will democracy survive in the next couple of years?
And essentially, we are the same.
And there are so many needs that Minnesota has.
What people are saying they need right now.
Access to democracy is made possible by donations from the following organizations. Thomson Reuters, a global company with expertise and insight to unravel complex situations in the areas of law, tax, compliance, government, and media. Their worldwide network of journalists and editors keep customers up to speed on relevant global events. Thomson Reuters, the Answer Company. Crutchfield Dermatology, a full-service treatment center in Medi-Spa in Eagan. Their goal is to help you look good and feel great with beautiful skin. With service built around courtesy, dignity, and respect, Mayo-trained Dr. Charles Crutchfield personally treats each patient and is acknowledged as one of the nation's best physicians. Firefly Credit Union, with locations throughout the Twin Cities, has proudly served Minnesotans since 1925. Firefly guides its members forward by delivering customized financial solutions to improve their lives in all aspects of banking. Firefly Credit Union, they light the way with life illuminated. Edina Eye, Physicians and Surgeons, a division of Twin Cities Eye Consultants, has proudly served the Twin Cities for more than 55 years. Now in 7 convenient locations. Using the most advanced technology combined with human touch, Edina Eye offers comprehensive services but dedicated specialists committed to excellence with innovative procedures and expertise for the most advanced eye care.
Welcome. Access to Democracy returns. We have a first-time guest, long-time politician here in Dakota County, and been looking forward to interviewing Lisa Noah. You might know her also as Lisa NEMER NOAH, and she is the chair of District 51, Congressional District 51 of the DFL. And Lisa, welcome.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you for having me.
Now, your political background goes back a long way. It goes back actually to your childhood in Crystal, Minnesota, and it goes back to your mother, who was active in Democratic politics. So why don't you give us a little background and bring us up to date?
Yeah, my mother actually attended college in South Dakota where George McGovern was her debate coach. So that's kind of where she became a Democrat under George McGovern's wing, so to speak. And so when I was growing up, she was a single mom, so she would drag me to all the DFL events that she went to. And so, like I've said, I don't think I've ever felt like an outsider in the party just because I kind of grew up in it. And so I was involved, or I went with her to her events. And then when I was in college, there wasn't a college Democrats. So I put on my sheet, that I was interested in college Democrats. And
we're
so
talking about Hamline University.
Yes, Hamline University. And there were like 3 of us, I believe, who wanted to start the college Democrats. And one of the other people was David Noah. So we eventually ended up getting married. But yes, I've always been involved in politics, felt it was an important part of my life. When my kids were growing up, I wasn't as involved. David stayed involved, but I did other things. But then when they left home, I got more involved. And John Wells was the chair of Senate District 51 DFL and needed a vice chair. And there's gender balance in the DFL, so he needed a non-male person to run. And so there wasn't anybody else who wanted to do it. So I said, okay, I can do this. And I learned under his wing for a few years. And then I ran for chair myself and was elected in 2018.
And the rest, as they say, is history. Now, you and David are not only Eagan residents, but you have a software company. Is that correct?
Yes, it's Intermart Incorporated is the name of our company. We have an office in Eagan, and our program is called Shipping Solutions. And the purpose of the program is to help companies that export do the paperwork that goes along with those exports, as well as compliance, making sure they're not shipping to someone who's on one of the government's bad guy lists. So that's what our software does. And
Yep.
David actually started that, wow, over 25 years ago now, I think. And I started working with him about 20 years ago now.
Well, you had a little bit of a 14-year hiatus with, I believe it was Ameriprise. Is that correct?
Yes, I was a corporate employee for the first part of my career and then moved into a small business environment. But that corporate experience was good training. And I'd always thought that a corporate career maybe had more job security than a small business, but I learned that a small business can actually have more job security because you have a lot more influence on the success of that business. So I'm very glad that I had the opportunity to work at the small business, and I was also able to be home with my kids more when I didn't have to travel to downtown Minneapolis every day. So it's worked out.
Now, does your software help only companies that are shipping overseas, or is it companies in general?
It's for shipping overseas primarily, but there are a lot of companies that export. There are hundreds of thousands of small businesses in the US that export because, you know, everyone's got a website now and everyone around the world can see your website. So quite often a small business will just happen to get an order from overseas and then they need help because there are a lot of export regulations. There's a lot of rules and you need to understand them, be able to comply with them. But we don't just serve small businesses. We have big companies too that use our software. So I spend my days mostly talking to our customers, helping them with the software, and it's a pretty rewarding job.
So the pandemic hasn't really affected what you do in terms of talking to or meeting with customers.
Right. I mean, we were worried at first because we didn't really know what was going to happen with the economy, but it seems that the economy has been hit in very specific areas, right? The restaurant business, hospitality business, travel. But fortunately, a lot of our customers are still doing business as usual. So we've been lucky that way.
I've been joined to my right off camera by my wife and co-producer Sharon, and at my feet is a dog who I'm sure is much heavier than your Molly, because Katie gets fed from the table and gets a lot of treats from me, and she's right here. She assists on all these Zooms that we do. Now,
She must not be a barker if she's able to hang out with you when you're taping.
She's a barker, but we're downstairs, so anything that comes into the cul-de-sac is her province, and she lets us know about it. Is it safe to say that you are a political leader who has never lost an election?
I guess so. I haven't run in that many elections. You mean myself personally or
Well,
elections in SD 51?
SD 51 that
Okay.
you have
Yeah.
really led. You've elected members to Congress, to the state Senate, state representatives, the Dakota County Board, etc. So you've got an unblemished record here.
Well, I haven't actually thought about it that way, but we have had a lot of success recently in SD 51. You know, I've lived here for 30 years now, I believe, and the area has changed a lot. We've had demographic shifts that have made it a more diverse area. We've had a lot more activists get involved. We've had really great candidates. So you combine all of that together and we've been able to have success now the last few elections, keeping Senate District 51 blue. So we'll see what happens with redistricting. That will be coming along next year sometime. We'll find out how our district is going to change. But for right now, we're very happy with our election results this time.
We don't know in terms of Minnesota how we're going to do in terms of congressional districts. We have 8, and do we go to 7? Do we go to 9, or don't we know?
We don't know. There's rumor that we could go to 7. I haven't heard anyone say we would go to 9. So I think it'll either be 8 or 7, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
Now, You obviously have had to do a lot of organizing in a very different way with the advent of the pandemic. So how has being a political leader changed you and what you do?
hmm Yeah. So as everyone knows, this came on so fast, right? We went from hearing about the coronavirus being in China to being affected right here in Minnesota quite quickly. And we were planning to host a fundraiser for Angie Craig at our house for St. Patrick's Day. We were looking forward to having a really fun party. And we had to cancel it because it just became apparent. And even 2 weeks before we were going to have it, I was asking the campaign, are we going to be affected by this virus? And oh, no, we're going to be fine. But uh, came to be that we did have to cancel. And so they held the fundraiser on Zoom. And it was kind of my first experience with Zoom, but I was glad that I had that experience right away because I could see right away that this was going to be a really good tool that we could use. So we pivoted very quickly in SD51. We started holding all of our meetings on Zoom. We kept up as many things as we could. The Burnsville happy hours that we were having, we didn't continue, but our book club, our coffee and conversation series all work really well on Zoom. We had to do our convention on Zoom. So we pivoted very quickly, and especially with fundraising, we have every year this event called the True Blue Party. We usually have it like at the Egan Civic Arena upstairs in the mezzanine. We get everybody together, we have food, but we couldn't do it that way this year. But we did it on Zoom. We had a link to donate. We made almost as much money as we did when it was in person. We also we usually do a summer picnic at a park in Egan. This year we held a Zoomnik, we called it, and we had speakers. We had some little fun videos that we played. We had, for people who donated, I made cups that said Zoomnik 2020. And so the idea was if you donated before the event, you could come and grab a cup off my front porch, and then we could all at least be drinking out of the same cup like we were at a picnic together. And we raised a lot of money there too, just by asking for donations to our website. So that's worked out well. And I mean, I think there are pros and cons. For me personally, it's not nearly as much fun to be the chair because I really enjoy talking to people, being together, socializing, getting to know people one-on-one. And that's harder to do when you're on Zoom. But it has definitely had its advantages. Like last night, there was a couple with two small kids who normally take turns coming to our meetings. They were both able to be there because they could be at home with their kids, be on the meeting at the same time. And even their young son was sitting in listening to the meeting. So there's that kind of thing that is really an advantage. And I also think we've gotten some new people because it's a lot easier if you just want to check out an organization to jump in on a Zoom meeting rather than having to get in your car, drive to a meeting, walk into a room of people you don't know. So that's been very positive. So once we are past this pandemic, we're going to have to figure out how we want to move forward. I think there's still going to be a place for electronic meetings, but we're going to definitely want to do some in person too. So we'll have to figure that out when the time comes.
Yeah, normally we would be having this interview in our beautiful studios at the Thomson Reuters building right here in Egan, and we don't. The other side of the coin is Zoom has enabled us to bring people in from as far away as Maine and New York and California for interviews where they couldn't be sitting across the table from us, and it wouldn't be, financially feasible to do those interviews. So that's been an advantage in that regard.
Yeah.
But the earliest we will be back in the studio is probably July 1st. If by then, and it's been a long time. Our crew has been shut out, except for Avi, who has done yeoman work and learned the procedures of Zoom and enabled us, except for 2 meetings, to continue. And we made up those meetings with the guests who were scheduled when the pandemic hit and we got shut down. So that's been very good. but you just went through a very important election, a presidential election. And one of the big things that you do is door knocking and getting people out. It's far beyond the caucus. So how did you deal with that? And what did you do to compensate to make sure that you were as successful as you were? And Egan, in particular, had a record setting a number of people vote this year. So tell us how you handled that.
Yeah, we actually had almost 90% voter turnout in Egan, which is amazing. Yeah, we did a lot of different things. Phone banking, of course, was very important. And the state DFL has a big organization called the Coordinated Campaign that leads a lot of phone banks. But our campaigns also did their own individual phone banks. And we, early in the campaign season, I got the 3 campaigns together, and we were able to coordinate so that if we wanted to make calls for Jim Carlson, we were also making calls for either Sandy Mason or Liz Ryer. So we did some phone banking that way. But then also we used to do a flyer, a sample ballot flyer that we would hand out for door knocking. This year we made it digital. One thing, it was a lot cheaper. And secondly, then we could put it on Facebook and boost it. Facebook ads are available and you can target your location. So we did like a 10-mile radius around Egan, and to try to get Burnsville in too. And we boosted those ads, and that's very affordable as well. We actually did some newspaper ads this time. We did a mailing of our sample ballot to apartments because they are often harder to reach. They often have newer people living there. So we had a lot of information on how to register to vote, how to vote early. So we did a combination of things this year because we couldn't door knock, and it worked out well. And then another big piece of it was our lawn sign effort. We have some amazing volunteers who put up signs. We had a form you could fill out if you wanted signs for your lawn, and then we had volunteers who would go out and just stick the signs in the lawn, and we got out hundreds of signs. We paid for some ourselves as a Senate district, so we could really have a big presence around the neighborhoods.
So that's a lot of innovative things that you added to the election this year. And obviously, there was a lot of innovative things that were very successful, because here we are in an all blue area that used to be all red when I first moved into this area.
Yeah, and it's not just us. I mean, the campaigns work really, really hard. And other shifts, demographic shifts, whatever, but we all have to do the work for the successful outcomes. It's not one thing, right? It's a lot of things to make it successful. I think one thing that's really happened in Egan since we've been living here is that people realize now that they're not the only Democrat in the neighborhood. I think that's what's really important about the lawn signs is you can proclaim, I'm a Democrat, right in your lawn, and your neighbors might see that and say, well, you know what, I'm a Democrat too, I want to get a sign. So it kind of builds on it when you're able to identify that you're not alone, that there are a lot of Democrats around here, and then there's safety in numbers and willing to put it out there that I'm proud to be a Democrat.
Speaking of safety in numbers, you had a Zoom meeting that was actually hacked earlier this year. Tell us about that experience and what you've done to protect yourself since then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was unfortunate. We had been doing Zoom meetings for 8 months. Even those 2 big events I talked about, our True Blue and our Zoomnik, and this had never happened to us before. But we had an election recap event, and luckily it was about 40 minutes in to our hour event, and all of our speakers had already spoken. I was about to open it up for questions, and we had about 11 people who came in. They Zoom bombed us. They came in, they started hurling obscenities and typing things in the chat that obscene things in the chat. And frankly, I wasn't ready for it because, like I said, we hadn't had this happen. We had had so much success with Zoom. So we ended up, because we couldn't keep up with booting them out of the meeting fast enough, just ending the meeting. And I sent out an apology to everyone who was there. But we're going to be more cautious now, of course. We're always going to have a waiting room. And I didn't have a waiting room because, you know, I have to balance trying to be inclusive. And I don't want to just say, well, I'm only going to let people in whose names I recognize. I want new people to come. So it's a matter of balancing the Zoom safety with being inviting to newcomers. But for now, we're going to have a waiting room. We're going to always have multiple hosts so that there will be enough people that can manage anything that might go wrong. We're not going to put our Zoom links on our Facebook events. We did put our Zoom link on our Facebook event for that election recap, and I think that's where they got it from. And so our links will only be in our emails and probably still on our website, but we're just being more cautious. Luckily, it happened after the election, but it was unfortunate because it was jarring to some people. So I felt very badly that they had that experience.
Well, it's not just you. We see it running through the country. We see it with elected officials who can't even accept the fact that the president-elect won the election. We see it with acts of violence. We see it with minorities who have been attacked in many communities. I just read about one the other day where an African American was surrounded by a group of Proud Boys, and they started hitting on him. He had a knife, and 4 of them ended up getting stabbed. I think it was in DC last weekend. But I mean, things like this, which we never experienced in years past, are really unfortunate. I attribute it, of course, to Donald Trump, who really engenders violence as part of his chaos. But hopefully that will be a thing of the past, as well as people jumping into your meetings and really hurling obscenities. What do they gain by that? Really just being disruptive, and it makes just no sense to me at all. But we have learned to live with it.
Right. I mean, I think it's the people who feel that way and want to do nasty things like that have always been around. I don't think that these are new feelings, but I think they've been emboldened to express them and act out on them because of our president. So I'm hoping that when we have a new president, Joe Biden, these people will go crawl back under the rocks where they were before. And because it won't be acceptable, it won't be encouraged. And I hope we'll go back to more of, civilized behavior. But I think too, I think a lot of us have learned a lot this past year, a lot of white people, that there's a lot more racism in this country, at least than I ever realized that there was. I think our eyes have been opened in a lot of ways. And so hopefully we don't just go back to normal, but we try to become a better country where there is more equality, where there is more inclusiveness, where people aren't discriminated against for their differences.
And I certainly hope so. I learned that early in life about things like that when my family moved to Florida when I was a kid, and I was the Jew in school, the only one. And it opened my eyes, among many other things. But so you learn to deal with bigotry and racism early. And it's really an unfortunate commentary on the times we live in. So let's talk about more pleasant things. We have the 2021 elections coming up. Do we have any candidates running? And if so, what plans do you have for them?
we're calling this, we're not calling it the off year, but we're calling it the prep year. So 2021 will be a prep year where my big goal is to market the DFL brand, right? I think there's a lot of people who don't know what being a Democrat means. A lot of people who don't realize they're a Democrat. So what I'd like to do is have videos and different content like that that we can put on Facebook, boost it, do a Facebook ad, encouraging people that they are Democrats. They believe in our values, right? It's really about values. It's not about a party, so to speak. It's about the values. So the DFL values of fairness and equal opportunity for all, and having good education and a strong infrastructure, all the things, good health care, all the things that Democrats believe in. We need people to know that, that's what we believe in. And so that's my mission for this year, is to build that DFL brand. I always say, I don't need everybody who's a Democrat to come to my meetings. I need everybody to feel like they're a Democrat. So that's kind of my goal. It's not necessarily that I need twice as many people at my meetings, although that would be great. But I just want to build in people's minds and hearts that they are a part of the Democratic Party, that they believe the same things that the Democratic Party believes. And then we'll be ready to go for 2022, because we're going to have all of our statewide officers up for re-election. We're going to have our Senate, our whole Senate, full House. So 2022 is going to be a very big year.
Very big year. All our constitutional officers are up once again, and we can see from the reaction of some of the Republicans in the Senate and the House right now what a difficult and probably really dirty election that's going to be. The only way I can phrase it, to say nothing else, with our state Senate and all our representatives. So it's a very big year. Your work is cut out for you, that's for sure.
Well, and it's very important that blue areas like Senate District 51 maximize our vote, because then, we help, we get the more votes that the blue districts can provide, the more we can make up for the red districts that we do have in the state. So that's my goal, is to stay focused on making sure people understand what being a Democrat means, and hopefully convincing them that they believe those same things and have those same values.
For some reason, we've always felt that Dakota County is a step above in terms of the violence that we've seen in other places. And yet there was an attack on our county center right after the election. And the George Floyd incident, and damage was done. Fortunately, those people were so stupid that they left the identification behind and have been arrested and charged with crimes. But we still have to stay alert. We still have people who steal lawn signs, although I don't think we suffered a lot of that. And we certainly didn't in this neighborhood. But it is an ongoing problem. So you have to really build awareness among everything else that you have to do. Yours is not an easy job. And the pay scale is not so great.
Right. It's a volunteer job, and everybody who's involved in the DFL, except for a small group at the state headquarters, we're all volunteers. So we have to just work as hard as we can to make our community the kind of place that we can be proud of, and keep it the kind of place we can be proud of. So what we try to do.
A lot of people who watch this program regularly. So would you like to, as we're in our last minute here, leave them with a message about the DFL and District 51?
Well, we would love for you to join us. We have a website, dfl51.org. There you can sign up to get my emails. I only send 3 to 4 emails a month, and I try to keep everybody informed as to what we're doing all the time through my emails. I encourage everyone to read them, so that even if you can't participate right now, you'll stay informed with everything that we're doing, and maybe the time will be right at some point to get more involved. I always say it's important to follow politics. It's not like sports, right? Where it's fine to say, well, I don't follow sports. That's fine. But you need to follow politics a little bit. It's about, your community, the place where you live, building a better future for everyone. So stay informed. And one good place you can do that is at dfl51.org.
Lisa Noah, the chair of District 51 DFL. And thank you so much for sharing with us, and we'll be talking to you again in the future.
Thank you so much for having me, Alan.